I'm delighted to be speaking with Sir Steven Redgrave, the 5 times Olympic medalist in 5 successive Olympics as well, from 1984 to 2000. As I said, it's an honour to speak with you today. You will be speaking at Master Investor next month, April the 25th. And you will be doing that, really sort of talking about Rhinomed. So maybe we can just start on that, and how you became involved in that product, and what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, Rhinomed is an interesting of investment I got involved in 2 or 3 years ago. A company from Australia came to me as Rhinomed and had this idea of increasing airflow through the nose, of a clip that you clip into your nostrils to open up the airways to get more oxygen in. And when you're talking of elite sports and of especially endurance sports, the limiting factor is the amount of oxygen you're getting in. Is in simple terms that when the air that you breathe in that goes into your lungs, and you're trying to get that oxygen through into the red blood cells that then go around to your body to give the muscles the power and the endurance they need to be able to do what you're doing. It's a very simple way of looking at it. So any mechanism of being able to improve that, you're certainly going to look at it. When I was competing, there was a breathing machine that had a resistance on it. So you'd actually stick it in your mouth and practice breathing, of getting the air in and out and developing the muscles to be able to increase that flow. So what the Rhinomed have done with the turbine is opening the airways of the nostrils up to be able to increase the blood flow, or the airflow, I should say. And it seems to be going down very well in the market and being seen to be a benefit within that area. But the interesting side of it is the spin-off from that is actually helping people to stop snoring, to be able to have more of a peaceful night's sleep. The product called Mute. And that's even more exciting in some ways, is that of people, partners are heavily affected by their other half of snoring. I know that I snore every now and again because I wake up quite bruised the following morning. And I know there are a lot of people that have issues with sleep, and that is within sports as well. Issues along those sort of lines of getting a good night's sleep. You do need a good night's sleep to be able to perform well the next day of whatever business, industry or sport that you're involved in. And it's exciting times. It's been really well received in the marketplace.
And what's the ideal sort of footprint for this product in terms of the markets? I mean, is it going to be in Boots the Chemist everywhere? What are you trying to achieve in terms of the goals for this? I mean, there's two sides to it, obviously.
The company's only been going producing elements in the last just over the last year. We're in 36 countries. The Mute is an online process. It's a starter pack with 3 sizes: a small, medium, large, and you work out which one works best for you, and then you order online from that. With the turbine, is that it's again a bit more of a trial and error, but that's sort of more of the marketplace of being out there in distributors that are involved in sports and sports markets. So a sort of two-pronged area in some ways of how we're focusing it from that point of view.
Right, and in terms of competition, is there sort of a vast array of lesser products out there?
There isn't that many products out there. It's a really new area. There has been one product I came across a number of years ago that it is more of a sticking plaster that you put onto your nose to open the airways, but that seems to be more of stretching the skin than actually opening the areas of the nostrils.
So this is a multi-patented product or products. And
yes, very much of a high-tech, cutting edge of license right the way through, and a lot of testing has gone on it and still going on, especially with the Mute side of it, of the new side of the snoring device to help you from that point of view. But so far, our testing is going really well, and people are really excited in the marketplace.
Right, and I mean, how do you? I mean, presumably, you've given your position, and you know, everyone knows who you are. You are bombarded with various business ventures, ideas, products all the time. How do you decide which one to go for? You know, in terms of, obviously David Beckham goes for his whiskey, and he goes for other things which may know on perfume. There could be the Steve Redgrave fragrance.
Not always the best smell.
But how do you decide which one to go for?
I think from my point of view of being involved in sport for 25 years and what we've classed as amateur of the sport, of being no prize money, appearance money and payment from that point of view, I feel that the things that I get involved with has to be of something that has value, sense of people that is going to make a difference in their lives, and something that excites me in some way. So being a sports person of Rhinomed with the turbine that was introduced to me, then I could see the theory of that of being a benefit for all sorts of people. One of the people that I got to try it out for me was actually an international rower who actually had his nose broken a number of years before and struggled breathing through that, and he found it a huge benefit from that. So things that I think that he's going to make a difference in people's lives. And so that's my starting area of looking at projects that come across my pathway.
Right, I just want to sort of dial back from the present, and you know, you are engaged in the Rhinomed product with other activities as well. Henry Royal Regatta as well. Life after being a sportsman or being in sport, isn't that is almost the biggest challenge as it is being in sport?
I think I was lucky in some ways of coming through my sport of certainly this country of the UK of we had success, what we would call success at Olympic Games, of a handful of people winning Olympic gold medals, and that seemed to be of where the country sort of sits itself. But for me, within my sport, to be able to get success, I had to look at the way that we did it, the way that we prepared, and look at it almost from a business sense of doing it. So my business sort of started in some ways of trying to get success within my own sport. My sports. We didn't have success before of my first games in '84 in Los Angeles since 1948. Great Britain staged the games in those games, and Great Britain only won 3 gold medals, 2 of them in the sport of rowing. And rowing in British side from that side didn't have success until 1984, as I said. So people said to me from a 15, 16-year-old of coming into the sport, "Oh, you've got the capability of being a world champion." I got excited about that and gave me a focus and a desire to go and do. But I felt if I just follow what the coaches tell me, follow the systems that we are, we'll be successful. The problem is that at that time, we weren't being successful. So the paths that we were following weren't paths of success. And after a few bad results at international regattas and world championships, I had to really look and thinking, well, I think I'm capable of doing great performances. Other people think I've got the capability. Why isn't it happening? So I looked at other sports. I looked at businesses of how they structured themselves to be able to get success, and realised that my sport was dominated by the Eastern Bloc countries who were doing it professionally, and we were doing it as part-timers. We weren't really doing it professionally enough. So I had to really schedule my whole program with my coach, Mike Sprackling at that time, of looking at how we were going to go do things to how we were going to get success. The scary thing is that within 9 months from being eliminated at the World Championships in 1983, I became an Olympic champion 9-10 months later because of some small changes of structure in what we were doing. And then once you start getting success breeds success. So you go into it with even more vigour and more focus in those type of areas.
So it's as if you were a management consultant in your own sport. I mean, you actually sort of took it from start from scratch. Let's just, we've been doing it. It sort of sounds like a transition between Chariots of Fire, that sort of approach of sort of the gentleman runner, which obviously I was going to touch on that as well. But a mindset approach and just saying, we just look at this is a mountain or a challenge that we're trying to conquer. It could be, it could be it could be literally like a mountain, it could be crossing a river or whatever it is, but you're just starting from scratch, no preconceived ideas at all. And was it sort of like an American approach that you really chose, or was it just more of just making everything more professional?
I think of making it more professional. The Americans, a growth area within the sport of rowing at the moment, they're not really the dominant force. It was East Germany when I was coming through, and some of them may have been not legal of the way that they were doing things. But other things that were unbelievably professional is that their coaches were university degreed for 5 years before you started at the grassroots of the sport and working your way up. Where in this country is that if you stumbled across the sport, could help out a little bit, you learned a little bit about coaching, and then could end up becoming an international coach of trial and error, and not being sort of regimented and more structured within that. Great Britain Rowing is one of the best in the world, and our infrastructure, our support staff is probably the best in the world from that side of it. So it shows you it's not just about how good the athlete is, it's how good your structure and pathway of coming through. At the beginning of my career, I would have said it's all about how good the athlete potentially can be. Now, it's the athletes are out there. We have people walking around the streets that are capable of doing great things in all sorts of business, industry and sports, and it's being able to find them. But you've got to put them into a structure that will get the best out of them. And that's what we're doing better than anybody else at the moment.
So that means that the government's funding everything really well, everything is being done 100%, there's no room for improvement.
There's always room for improvement. That if you look at anything, things always move on. If you want to be the best, you tend to look around to see who is at the top and see how they do it and try and copy what they do. The problem with that is that whoever's the best at the time is not resting on their laurels. They're trying to push the boundaries back. And I sort of came across that sort of process. Is that I used to the way that British rowing was trained back in the 70s and early 80s. It was short and sharp. We had to hold down either education or part-time or full-time jobs. And so we had to have a living to be able to do it because there's no money in the sport. So we used to train very intensely for very short periods of time. Produces a lot of lactic acid, which slows the body down, and it takes a long time to repair. So if you and me go to the gym and we do exercise now, we haven't done an exercise for a while, we'll get very sick and very sore. That's lactic acid. That's a substance to protect the body to slow itself down. It's quite interesting that a young kid doesn't produce lactic acid because they grow so quickly, their body would be fatigued all the time of protection system. So it's not through to your early teens that starts to change. And then as an athlete, you've got to deal with that substance because that's slowing you down of what you're trying to do. So we find ourselves training below that threshold where we produce lactic acid and trying to push that boundary further back. And so we train for long periods of time, low intensity. When I say low intensity, if you relate it to heart rate, a low endurance training session is about an hour and 45 minutes on the water of what we call steady state rowing, but you'll be holding your heart rate somewhere between 120 and 140 beats per minute. That's an average. Some people will be a little bit high, some people will be a little bit lower than that. When you're flat out, absolute maximum, it's around 180, 200 beats per minute. So it's quite below that threshold, but it's still pretty hard.
Right. I mean, you discussed or you described how you got started, but it seems to me there are some points to sort of focus on. Your background, as you sort of described yourself, is a working class background. You're going into rowing, which is not regarded as, it's like probably one of the most posh things you can do. And then you had the belief, or you were told that you were going to be good. You believed what they told you, and you had the arrogance to try and be the best. Not everybody does that. People, also some people are told they're good and they're not, which is a problem I've had. Other than some people are told they're rubbish, which a lot of times happens, and they sort of fight back against that. I will be the best. I will be the best. But it seems to me that a lot of what you've done and in going for gold again and again and again and again, you were sort of on a mission. You really were on a mission it was like on a mission and wanted to say something in terms of what you were achieving. That's very rare in people, and it sort of does strike me that either you've got it in you to be what you've done, or you haven't. And if you haven't, there's no way you can get there. You can't even start. So you are, let's say you're a national hero, but you've been, the dice have been thrown genetically very, very favourably. Is something you would agree with?
Yes, in some ways, yes. But of genetics, the way that you've had those dice thrown, as you put it in those terms, it's then what you do with those dice. You're dealt a hand of cards. It's not always of which cards you're holding. It's how you play those cards that is more important. And so I've been blessed of having the height and long levers, which is what rowing's all about. It took me 10 years of my rowing career to work that one out. Early coaches were saying, you've got to row longer, you've got to get the blade further around the boat and placement. Thinking, I'm stronger than anybody else, I can rip this blade through the water. The thing is, you don't want to rip the blade through the water, is that the blade is placed in the water, and it's the blade that then becomes the fixed point, and you're levering the boat past that position. So if you can row a centimetre further than the person you're racing, and you're doing the both rate of striking, how many strokes per minute, the same, is that because you're reaching further, your boat's moving further per stroke. Simple physics in some ways. And as I said, that took me quite a long time to come to terms with. I thought it was more about power and brute force and just about of power of wills. But there's so many other things about it. And in some ways, I think the human race likes doing things they're good at and will avoid things they're bad at. And that if you find something that you enjoy doing, get fun out of doing it, you want to do it more. If you dislike something, you want to avoid it and get away from it. And I found rowing not easy. The first time I did it, literally a few hundred yards away from where we are at Marlow Rowing Club, where I started. And I went out in an 8 the first day and struggled to control the blade, struggled to get it in time with everybody else. It was a dark evening. I had the blade back to front at some stages and struggled, but it felt freedom. It felt of somebody that was dyslexic and struggled at school, of having something that was the head of the English department at my comprehensive school said, why don't you try the sport of rowing? He had two loves. He was rugby and rowing, and we were a football school. So we didn't really have chances of doing that. So being able to come down here onto the River Thames and doing something that was a little bit different than most other people didn't get the chance doing, I felt privileged from that point of view. And within weeks, I started getting to grips with the sport. And then after a month, Francis Smith said to me, should we go and do a race? Go and do a race. God, that sounds exciting and fun. And we went off to Avon County School Regatta, and that we won the event. We were quite surprised that we won the event. Our first season of Junior 14-4s, we raced 7 times and won all 7. And thought, with God's gift of rowing, isn't this fantastic? Aren't we brilliant? The difference is that where you mentioned that the private schools is that they focus on 8s. So we could only get 4 people together. Say Eton, Radley, Shrewsbury, those type of schools. They'll have a first 8. So their 2 top 4s are in the 8. They'll have a second 8. So the third and fourth 4 will be in there. They may have a third 8, or they might be putting a 4. So we would be racing at best the third or fifth best 4 from that school in that year group. What that rubbed off on us is that we got success. We believed that we could win, and the winning mindset is half the battle. So of having the physique and the stature to do it in the first place, you need to be able to have that to perform at the highest level. but then it's how mentally you deal with that and get the best out of yourselves. And I got a taste of success and wanted to carry on being successful. People thought I could do it. So when it wasn't happening, I had to work out quite why it wasn't happening and how I could make it happen.
But you're saying really that, I mean, sport, for young people, or the reason we should really push sport for young people is it teaches them how to win, or how to, get that mindset. And then they can apply that to anything else they're doing.
We've gone
the way
through,
you would say
yeah, no, very much so. We've gone through of the old conservative way of sport for all and non-competitive sport. Everybody should be a winner.
Yes,
I disagree with
yes,
that.
I mean, there's a game of football. Everybody gets these days. I've seen, there's a game of football. Everybody gets a sort of like a little medal at the end.
Yeah,
the winning and the losing. So there's nobody. So what was the point of playing?
crazy. Exactly.
It's just politically correct.
I'm happy of having non-competitive sport as long as we have non-competitive in the classroom as well. Somebody that struggled with maths and English, who was at the bottom of the class of maths and English every time, I found that very distressing of struggling there. Because I found an area where I was being able to success at, then people were saying, oh, that's not right. We live in a very competitive world. Our competitive instincts are very much part of how we survive and how the human race moves on. And the earlier that we can learn that, and I think what sport does for you is give you a roundness in some ways. It helps you to be able to win, but it also helps you to deal with failure as well. Because there's nothing more visual than sport. You have one winner and a number of losers in one event. And so you have to come to terms with that. You're not going to win every race you're in. You're not going to be involved in that. And I think as a rounded person, you need that. And I think that is why sport is used in a majority of our schools as one of the learning tools that is part of a successful society.
And I mean, it was just before we started the interview, I was describing one of my memories of you, which is nearly 20 years ago when you went for the fifth. You went to Sydney for the fifth time, and I was just I was saying, don't do it, just don't go there. You've got four, and you said that was actually, maybe everybody was thinking the same thing. It was like, who wants to be a millionaire? Just stick on 100 grand. That's a lot of money, for instance, and stop there. Is that what you're talking about? Is that really the sort of the difference between being a competitor and really being focused, a winning? You're doing something which is your life's ambition.
I think you've got to be realistic about what you're doing. I love the sport of rowing, still do. And I did it for 25 years of my life and got to the pinnacle of our sport 5 times over at the Olympic Games. I nearly retired after Atlanta, made that statement that if anybody sees me near a boat, they've got my permission to shoot me. But that's how I felt at that particular moment. But 24 hours afterwards, I was thinking, Sydney would be fantastic. I love Australia. I love the Australia outdoor culture. It'd be fantastic to go. What a great place to finish your rowing career. And I never told anybody for 3 months before formal training started. And then sort of ummed and ahed if I would do it. I think, I feel I could still be successful. But in some ways, it wasn't just about being successful or winning that gold medal. Obviously, that was the end game of what you're trying to do. But it's how you go about it. I felt I could still be a better athlete. I was getting to, in sporting terms, a little bit older, so the rate of improvement is slower. And the people that I was rowing with and people I was racing against was improving at a much greater rate than I was. But within rowing, it's a team element. It's how you bond together and move forward within that. Is that there's a saying within the sport is that you only go fast as the slowest person in the team. It's not about the star in the boat. It's about how the team works. You could put the 4 best rowers together in the world. That doesn't guarantee it's going to be the best 4 in the world. And it's those principles. So it's more of the challenge. Now, if we'd lost because we'd got complacent and didn't train as hard or took our foot off the gas in some ways and thinking, oh, this is our right of being here, I would have struggled to be able to cope with that. If we'd lost because somebody had performed better than us and we did everything we possibly could do to get the best performance out ourselves on that day and we lost, it would be still tough to take, but you can accept that. So it's the manner of the way you go. But then if you don't try, how do you know how high you can go? We do like our sports stars to not go over the top. We want to see them retire when they're at their top. When is their top?
Leave them wanting more is what the normal thing is in showbiz.
It's that element of perhaps just getting there. I knew with coming down with diabetes, I'm a colitis sufferer as well, of medical conditions that was coming my way, of the people around me, the commitment I would have had to put in for another 4 years. I would have been 42 at the next games. That would be really pushing it within my sport. It's been done before, so it could be right, but I wasn't prepared to put the commitment.
I mean, let's say if you didn't have, the encroaching illnesses or the diabetes, I think that came in while you were still
3 years before.
You could have gone for a sixth, or it could have happened if you'd been all thinking, without those. But
I think the human mind always believes you, and now sitting here or looking back and saying, if I really wanted enough, I think that I probably could have been
2004.
And actually, I actually sat down with my brain coach 2 years out from Athens and said, well, what do you think about a comeback? And he was a bit shocked that I was mentioning it in the first place, and he didn't discard it straight away, but he said, let me think about it. And he moved away for a couple of days and then came back to me and he said, no, I don't think so. That it would be the wrong thing to do. But even then, I felt that I potentially could come back and get back onto the team. But that's what it would be, is it coming back onto the team. Yes, I would hope to win another medal. Would it be gold? Probably not. It almost came to a challenge of having 2 years out of the sport and training how I did for 25 years before that. It almost came to the challenge, how far could I get back from having 2 years out?
Yeah.
Catherine Granger's doing it at the moment. She won gold in 2012 after 3 Olympic silver medals, then got a gold medal. She retired, and after 2 years of being out, has come back and trying for Rio next year. It'll be interesting to see how she managed to do that. She'll be 40 at. Shouldn't mention ladies' ages,
exactly,
but
yes.
I think it's out there in the public domain.
Look it up on Google.
It'll be interesting to see of can she medal and can she repeat the gold medal that she got last.
Right, I just want to go slightly wider in terms of maybe away from sport, but this is the first question is related to that. How much is winning for your country important? You're 4 generations around these parts. We're in Marlow, Buckinghamshire here. How much is was waving the flag important to you, and how much is your country important to you?
I think the identity is very important, individually and nationally, as well as locally. So we're a country that, for the Commonwealth Games, split into 4 sections. Rowing isn't a Commonwealth Games sport. I rowed once in the Commonwealth Games, and that it was quite difficult because the British team almost came the English team, and not all of them came from English parts. But because the events are so close to each other, so we could see that sort of rivalry. But then when you come across football and rugby and cricket, especially rugby, of the elements of the home countries are very much of a driving force of it. I remember going down to Millennium Stadium for one of the rugby internationals just after I'd stopped. And the Welsh were saying to me as I was walking to the stadium, "Oh, we're going to beat you today." I mean, I've competed all my life for Great Britain. Great Britain is at the top for me. I'm English second. I'm from Buckinghamshire third, Marlow fourth, and that's the order of it. But there is this sense of proud and structure behind that, and that identity that you're. But when you're going out doing your training of 18 to 24 sessions a week for 49 weeks a year, of pushing yourself to your limits to try and get the, is your country at the top of your mind at that point? I don't think it is. It's more about of personal of drive and structure from that point of view. But when you race down or get that letter saying you're selected to go to the Olympic Games for Great Britain, there's nothing more prouder. racing down and then being able to stand on that podium and have a medal put around your neck and the national anthem being played and sung. There is nothing more prouder than that, and I'm proud to be able to do that for my country. But I can't say it was my country that I was out here on this bit of water at the beginning of my career. Yes, I had dreams of maybe being able to do that, but certainly it wasn't the motivating factor of getting out of bed every morning to get the training done to be able to make that dream become reality.
Right, and I mentioned your background, a working class background. How much was beating posh people when you were young? How much satisfaction did that give you? Is that a factor in what you did? Did you sort of chuckle to yourself? You know, we've beaten the Etonians, we've beaten I don't actually know if Harrow has a rowing team, but we beat the rich kids. Did you have any of that?
Not really. I was very much sort of rolled around my own world, as you say, coming from a working class family. Both my grandfathers, one was a bus driver in Birmingham for 40 years, and my other grandfather was here in Marlow, that was a carpenter. High Wycombe was the furniture capital of Great Britain, so that's the reason that he was here. My father had obviously that upbringing, and went into the Merchant Navy for a few years. And when he came out of that, he wanted the best for his family, so he did several different jobs, some at the same time, to sort of push him up the ladder. I probably would have classed myself as sort of middle class, because that's the sort of the background that I've been brought up with, even though that my parents and grandparents are very much working class. Yes, there was an element of racing the top rowing schools, but I just felt that it wasn't of they
made the best person win, rather than anything else.
I didn't see myself as being underprivileged from the setup I had, and when then you can start winning races and beating these people, I got the joy out of winning races, not who I beat. It was more to me of how far I could go as an individual, of my personal challenges of what I could do. So from starting rowing when I was 13, nearly 14, by the time of 16, I was dreaming of competing and winning one Olympic gold medal. That's what I wanted to do.
Right. And can a knight of the realm be working class? Or remain working class, or their children, his children or his grandchildren? Isn't that going to change? I mean, a couple of generations, they might be speaking like me. It could be a nightmare.
It does make you think in some ways of the education that I came through. I did think of some of the people that had privileged educations from that point of view. I'm never going to put my kids through private education.
But and
then when it came to that stage, yeah, I have put my kids through private education, and it does concern me of how their children are going to be, or how their children are going to be. I think that my children are pretty. Is that selling out? I think a human instinct is wanting the best for your offspring. I'm more sporty than academic. My wife was probably more academic than sporty, but she also represented a country at the '84 Olympics and finished fifth in the women's eight. And so we've had both sides of it. I think as a family we're pretty even level-headed in some ways. One of the things that really horrified me is that coming back from Sydney, my youngest was 2 at the time, and we flew down to see my eldest godmother, who lives out in Malaga, for Christmas, for New Year, and we got on the flight. And up until that time, we had been going on to flights and being upgraded from the results that I'd got, which is great from my length of legs and from that, and nice to be able to do it. And we got on to Go Airlines, and we were last to get on the flight, sitting right at the back of the plane. We got there, and my son, who was then 3, said, how do I get the TV out of this chair? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, for most of my career, we didn't even fly business class. We flew at the back of the plane, because big teams, no money within the sport, that's what you have to do. When you're talking of people of 6 foot plus, I'm 6'4", that if you're travelling, representing your country to the other side of the world, as a person, you want them to arrive in the best possible shape to perform for our country the best possible way. But we didn't do that majority of the time. That a very sort of, so you're looking for the emergency exits, you're looking from that point of view. And my concern is that, God, how am I bringing my son up? If that's what he does, every time he gets onto a plane, he's thinking about of the material things around him, and so that of making sure that he understands of what society is about and what you've got to do for you've got to work for.
Right. Master Investor, which you'll be speaking to, as I said, speaking at the end of April, a couple of weeks before the general election. You have, stated that, you obviously work with governments in terms of being, say, a consultant in terms of which direction, sport goes, an ambassador for that area. Are there any issues on your mind that you think, you'd be interested to see how they are resolved over this election, because it could go anywhere, in any direction? Are there any particular concerns you have? I mean, maybe the housing market, immigration is a very hot potato as well. Are there things that you're focusing on in terms of the election? What might happen?
I'm sort of keeping a very close eye of how things are developing and of the structure. Obviously, being a sports person, I'm interested in more of the sports side. Traditionally, sport has done slightly better under a Labour government than a Conservative government, even though that in recent years, the build up to 2012, that has changed. That Olympic sport has never been in a better situation than it has been for the last 10 years, and there's been a crossover of parties within that. But I think I'm mentally quite socialist in some ways. I like everyone being able to have the opportunity to have opportunities of success. I think true socialism doesn't work. I think it very sort of promotes complacency and doesn't drive you as an individual from that point of view. I think we need to be driven in some ways of trying to get success. That may be because of my sporting career, but I think that's in all of us, I think. And we have to have an environment that drives us to push ourselves to our limits, which moves society on. I don't like the society of sitting back and expecting somebody else to do something and lay it on a plate from that point of view. And that goes from being well-educated to not being well-educated in both areas from that. Issues, National Health is I think, a tremendous organisation, but needs more funding.
But is it needs more funding? We just actually can't afford it.
Well,
we can't afford a free health service. It's £100 billion a year, £100 billion a year. That's a lot of tax. Wouldn't it be cheaper just to for people to get a private insurance, health insurance? The people can afford it.
The costs, whoever pays for it has to pay for it if it's private or state driven.
Rich people opt out.
I chose to educate my through primary school at private school, and in the community side level we have a very good primary school, and they said, why aren't you sending your kids to the private school, and not sending them to this great school just down the road, the school that you went to? And I said, well, I'm in a situation that I can afford to at this point put my children through this education, and that's actually what that's doing is making it easier for the school to be able to take other numbers of living just down the road. Of roughly 30 people in a class. At that stage, it was a little bit more than 30 people in the class. Is that if my children go there, that means some other people can't do that. I can afford to be able to do it. So there is an element of that. But when you're talking that to the national health, it's very much about of the national health. If you are in trauma, if there is a something that you need to be treated with here and now, there is nothing better than national health from that point of view. So more richer people can of dip in and dip out from that. But I think morally it's right that everybody has a very good service of sorts.
And morally, people who come in from the EU or beyond and use the National Health Service or our education system, is that something you can swallow as well? Even if it's 500,000 people coming in a year,
most people that are coming
for a better life, can we house? Can we support all these people?
Well, housing issues, and I'm from a building family, so housing issues are very much on my agenda. Most of the people that come into our country are coming here to work. If they're working, they're paying taxes, they're paying their dues, and I don't see a problem from that point of view. But we've also got to make sure that our residents, long-term residents, still have the opportunities, and that's where it's getting that balance from that. That we've all moved more towards middle class in some ways. The educational systems have changed. That a few years ago it was sort of around 10 to 15% of our secondary students going on to university, and it's around 50%. There are less people wanting to go out and do the manual work. That they're all looking for something a little better. You can't fault them trying to look better, but we still need people to do every aspect of work within society. So it's getting that balance is right. And so when we're talking about elections point of view, of all the major parties, they all talk about roughly the same. There isn't that much difference of extremes of views. It's very much of
a mishmash,
middle of the road, and slightly in one direction and slightly the other.
But would you vet people coming to this country? You think it should be a sort of open door, or would you have a sort of a test of Britishness maybe? My last rowing coach coached me to my last 3 Olympic gold medals. Has done his British citizenship. I'm a Deputy Lieutenant of Buckinghamshire, and have done some of those citizen awards of handing out, and it's really quite humbling of seeing people come from different parts of the world and want to be part of our society. And of the Britishness test, I think I may struggle to answer all the questions. I think that's
on that.
Only 4
and I think that's more concerning in some ways, but. I don't think you can have a total open door policy because of your identity of where you come from. I think people coming into the country have to take on the traditions and of be part of the country you're moving on to. And that's not just about Great Britain, that's about of anywhere.
But the problem we have is that the children of the people who come here, some of the children who come here, the parents who wanted to assimilate and be part of Great Britain, they're not actually that keen. So they're rebelling against their parents and actually trying to go back to a different culture, different lifestyle.
You're probably a better one to answer that than me, of being a second generation person coming into the country. It's difficult. Is that we did have an empire. We went around the world and tried to put our values onto of most other areas within world society. And I think that there is an obligation there of some sort of us doing that, and of interrupting with other people's lives, then that if they want to come to our country and be part of our society and want the way that we want to live, I think that's fair enough.
So it's sort of a payback, a little bit of a payback.
But we are only a small island. Yeah. We don't have that much room. And then that goes on to the housing and job market of every aspect. There isn't enough housing within the country to satisfy a demand that we've got. That's why housing markets the prices go higher and higher and higher. Of living here in Marlow and Buckinghamshire, as you say, 4 generations of my family. As a kid, I can remember this being a small town community, and now it's very much a commuter belt for London. And the world gets a smaller place.
Do you think overall, let's say, the the economy, the multiculturalism, everything else has actually overall been positive.
I think so. I think so.
And it goes in with your inclusive view of this, maybe more socialist philosophy with more entrepreneurial, maybe let's say right-wing, more right-wing conservative type of attitude. So you're trying to sort of mix, or you've mixed the best of both worlds. Is that sort of the way you look at it?
I think that's a very good way of putting it. When I was younger, living up in this area, my life, my world was Marlow. Didn't know very much beyond it, and of what I did within my sporting career of travelling the world, is that I've realised, and I think that generations, as we get older, realise the world is a very much smaller place than it used to be. Of what we call our home and our elements are now world issues, and I think that most countries are being part of world culture, and we've got to be able to look after our planet in all sorts of different areas, and we've got to be able to manage that. So extremism of anything isn't a good thing, and it's got to be well balanced.
So Steve Redgrave, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Pleasure.